episode of the My New Normal podcast. I am here, Dr. Teresa Larson, with my co-host and better half, Per Larson. And we have a very special guest today who is climbing a rope at the moment. Joe De Sena, the CEO and founder of Spartan Race, the top obstacle race in the world. And so, Joe, welcome.
Thanks for having me. The only obstacle race.
The only, yes, thank you. And what I'm really excited about with this podcast is I've been in touch with Joe for quite some time. I would say actually 4 years now. Joe has, I absolutely love following his thought leadership on LinkedIn, basically all the social channels. And I'm not on social media that much, but when I am on, if I'm going to follow someone, it will be the real Joe De Sena and what Spartan's up to. But he holds a special place in my heart, and my husband knows this because when my father passed away 4 years ago, my dad was always about, sweat for someone you love. And we did a Spartan race out in San Francisco, your stadium race, Joe. And then my father passed away, and I was like, what's the one thing that I can do that's going to be really uncomfortable that he would really dig? And I was like, I'm going to do Spartan races. I'm just going to commit to the season. And so I messaged Joe, and he was super supportive and kept in touch with me after that. And so, Joe, I appreciate that experience. And
it's my pleasure. We get emails all day, every day from folks going through stuff because that's what life is, right? We all go through all kinds of stuff. And my feeling is with business, just put it out there and help people, and it comes back tenfold. It doesn't always come back directly.
No. Yes.
How many years ago? That was at least a couple of years ago, right?
It was 4 years ago.
4 years ago, and then here we are doing the podcast. So
yes.
I knew it was good for you, good for your dad, and now it's good for me.
Yes. So I went to your Clever Talks. So I was part of the first Clever Talk series, and then I was able to watch you speak and meet you. I basically chased you down there.
Yeah.
So I've also now been doing Spartan races consistently. And now that this year, my son is 2 years old, I'll be continuing to do Spartan races. And my husband will be joining me at the World Championship this year. Nice. So we'll see you again. Nice. But we're stoked to have you on because today's episode is about what it takes to build a resilient company. And we know from my husband and I building our company, it takes being a resilient human. And that's a choice. Being resilient doesn't just come to you. There's choices you make. So I'm excited, Joe, to dig in to what it's been taking you, the process to build Spartan, which has become a worldwide name. But there's a commonality with you and Per. Like, you both graduated from Cornell.
You both went to Cornell, or Per went to Cornell?
You went to Cornell.
I was a Cornellian.
I knew you were smart. I saw it right away. And did you pay to get in like I did?
I was one of the whatever slots they hold available for football players. I was one of those guys. So they helped me out quite a bit.
What do you think about all that news in the press about folks getting into schools?
I'm surprised it hasn't been opened up. That hasn't come to light earlier.
I was recently at a friend's house in Vancouver, a very wealthy friend last week, and they have young children like my wife and I have young children, and we're always joking like what schools, and I always say, well, Cornell would be the school I probably have some connections and I could at least get the kids interviews.
Yeah, legacy, right?
My friend's wife really wants Stanford, Harvard, like anybody would. Cornell's just not quite there in many people's minds. It's there in my mind. It might be there in your mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so she went through this whole dissertation about how there's a person in Vancouver that can help get kids ready and has had a 100% success rate getting them into the best schools, and it's $30,000 a year and only takes so many students. And she went through this whole thing, and then the husband, my friend also, at the end of it just said, well, can't we just make our kids work hard and apply? It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And then like a week later, all this news came out.
Yeah.
It's funny, my mind, when she was saying it, was thinking, wow, if there's really a process to make the kids better, where they 100% success rate get into these schools, I want to institutionalize that process. I want to find out what it is.
Yeah,
I literally never thought that some people were taking tests. Like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's
sorry to go down.
It is what it is. Yeah. A longer conversation for another time about the future of college education.
Yeah.
So I did look at, I was recruited by Cornell, but their coach was named Coach Blood. And I was like, no. And plus it's in the Northeast. Like, I'm not going to play softball in the Northeast. But then I went to Villanova, so I did play softball in the Northeast.
You did it anyway. All right.
But my coach wasn't named Coach Blood.
Coach Blood. All right. Everybody makes their choices.
Yeah. Yes.
I bet you regret it.
Well, okay. So we always start off this podcast also with some icebreakers. So because we're focusing this around, like, the obstacle racing has been very fun. I have my favorite obstacle, but I want to know your favorite obstacle, Joe.
Well, I'm on a rope right now while I'm talking
Yeah.
to you. You know what? I like every obstacle, but
Your favorite, though.
it's gonna sound like something I have to say, but it's true. Whatever the hardest obstacle for me is that day, or just in general, that's the one that I'm attracted to. I tend to seek things I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As soon as my mind says, oh, I don't want to, sometimes I'll even make my own obstacle at one of these races. I was in Scotland, you'll like this, and I saw 2 tent weights that were holding down a tent. They were 50 pounds each. They looked almost like dumbbells, but they were square rather than being round.
Yeah.
And my mind immediately said, wouldn't it be crazy if there was an obstacle you had to carry those 2 50-pound tent weights? Literally, in 12 seconds, not even a fraction of a second, my mind thought that and immediately said that would be ridiculous. I'm not doing it. And so then I had to do it.
Yeah.
So then that night before the race, I said, wouldn't it be unbelievable if I can get a bagpiper because we were in Scotland.
Yeah.
And if the bagpiper was to follow me the whole way, blowing the bagpipes while I was carrying these dumbbells, wouldn't that be unbelievable? And so I got a bagpiper.
Nice.
And literally for 5 hours, I carried these dumbbells and I listened to this bagpipe. And I didn't answer the question directly, but I had to reflect on that.
Yeah.
But I would say spear throw, because spear throw is hit or miss, and then you got to do your 30 burpees. It's a burpee game.
Yeah.
So
well, before that, I have to ask, at 5 hours of bagpipes, how do you feel about bagpipes now?
It's funny. Some mornings I wake my kids up. We wake our kid. I wake my kids up. I can't say my wife is part of it. I wake my kids up every morning, 5:45 a.m. And sometimes I'll put AC/DC, like Thunderstruck, on to wake them up. Many times I put bagpipes on. And this morning, I was like, you know what? I'm so tired of bagpipes. I'm not going to. So that's the answer to the question.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, I'll tell you my favorite one. My favorite one is the monkey bars, because it's one I haven't. I have not mastered it. I mean, there's a lot of obstacles I haven't mastered, but it continuously frustrates me, but it forces me to work on my weakness, which is just upper body agility and strength. And so
it's all of us.
I find the one that was the most frustrating, I did one in Vail Creek here in San Diego, and I'm 6'1", and the monkey bars were like maybe 5'10" height. So I was also doing like knee raises at the same time.
Love it. I love it.
My feet wouldn't touch. But yeah, I always owe 30 burpees for that one. And my second one up is the spear throw, actually, because it's a hit or miss. And I actually, after my first one, realized, wow, I have no accuracy. I played softball for a really long time, but this is a lot different. And I shot weapons, but this is still very different.
Those spears.
Throw it underhand or overhand?
Well, as a pitcher, I throw underhand. I was a fast pitcher. But then I still have to, if the ball hits me, I still have to throw overhand. But it's much different throwing a softball and a spear. And then the shooting a weapon still is very different. So I was like, okay, I only have one time to hit this damn thing, and I am going to figure it out. So
I've yet to miss a spear throw, so I like this.
Yeah.
Throw.
Football player here, like, I was like, what the hell? Like, I was the one that trained for this, and he crushed.
He's a Viking.
It's a Viking.
Yeah, there you go.
So, okay, well, do you want to start off with the first question?
Sure. Well, so we're talking about business resiliency, right? And we know business is never linear, right? All the successes we hear about today, they were loops and curls and lefts and rights over time. And maybe just in your experience, first question is, why do you think that is? Why is it such a circuitous route to get to where you are?
Well, it's funny, right? And I'm not going to answer any of these questions perfectly. I apologize in advance.
There's such thing as perfect.
Yeah, I didn't really think about building a resilient company. I've never been asked that question before, so I'm not prepared. But let's have some fun.
Yeah.
I think that's the case because that's life, right? There's no straight lines in life. Everything, every day, what can go wrong does go wrong. And I've been a big proponent for years in fire ready aim because the environment changes so fast. 300 years ago, it wasn't changing as rapidly as today.
10 years ago, it wasn't changing as fast.
Yeah, I'm doing business for 40 years now, and I've yet to have a plan that was able to be executed based on things I thought were, nothing I thought was true turned out to be true.
Yeah.
So I like to lay something out, but it's not a very detailed plan. And so the environment changes, the consumer changes their tastes. Nothing that you think is going to happen actually happens. And so you've got to adapt and be malleable to the environment.
Sure.
And so that's why it's not a straight line. Like I can't think of one example. Like,
nor I.
Marriage doesn't work that way. Kids don't work that way. Sports don't work. Nothing works that way in a straight line, right?
Just gravity.
So my question for you after that would be, well, we've experienced that with our company. I mean, I kind of like okay, you do this, then you do this, and this is what the outcome is. But that's not the way it works.
No.
There's a ton of learning, and sometimes you feel like you're going 10 steps backwards, 2 steps forward, and other times you're going 10 steps forward, 2 steps backward. But you as a person, you are a resilient person. What over the years, maybe it's the things you've gotten involved in, choices you've made, your upbringing, what do you think is the key tactics you've created and built for yourself along the way, or people that have come into your life to help you be resilient, because you're the one that's running the company and creating this movement?
Well, I think one, you've got to be resilient in order to have a successful company because of the reason you said, which is nothing goes in a straight line. So just by definition, you have to be the kind of person that can handle the ups and downs, right? My father used to say, most people don't have the stomach for it. It is much easier. I was an employee once, and it was awesome because you just don't have the stress, right?
Yeah.
And so everything that can go wrong does go wrong. When I think about why am I resilient, I think about it in the framework of how do I make our kids resilient, or kids in general resilient. I think it's through practice. I think we all are wired to be hard to kill. I think we're wired that way, right? To survive like any animal, but we learn helplessness in this environment. Again, 200 years ago, the three of us would be having this conversation on a horse and carriage. Snowstorm would be rolling in. Wooden wheel would break. Yeah. There's nowhere to get the wooden wheel fixed, so we're stuck for 3 weeks in a snowstorm, right? Hare is probably heading up the mountain to go kill a deer so we can eat, because he's the only one that knows how to throw a spear. And so how do we get control back of our resiliency in this environment where there's always safety nets under us? Everything we want is right at our fingertips. Netflix, right? Wi-Fi, food. You don't even have to go outside for food. Uber, you could order food on an Uber.
You can.
How frustrated are the three of us when the Uber driver doesn't show up exactly where we're standing.
Or the cheese on my burger is congealed.
Exactly, right? So I guess my feeling is you have to actually get uncomfortable and deal with difficulty to become resilient. And so I guess as I talk to you and think about it, 40 years of doing business, I've been at war.
Yeah.
Right, Teresa? I mean, I've been at war. I've been shot at all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
The bullets never stop flying. The best employees leave when you need them. The competition steps in right when you can't handle it.
Yeah.
Factory burns down when you're out of money. Like everything that can go wrong the last 40 years goes wrong every single day.
Partners want to quit.
Eventually you got this stomach of steel like my father talked about, because you start to learn that, okay, I'm not dead. And as long as I'm not dead, I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people will hear me say under my breath the last decade or even more, I'm not dead. Literally, that's my, could be worse. Not dead, still alive.
Yeah.
And some people say to me, oh, you're setting a really low bar. But that's really where my mind goes. Like if I'm alive, if I'm breathing, we're good.
But it's such a, right, but be reductionist like that is that's the most human thing you can do versus all these trappings of I want or my comfort or whatnot. Those kind of get in the way of what's they color the filter you have of what's actually where you're going.
I want to laugh on that note. And believe me, I like nice things like all of us. We have a wonderful farm in Vermont. Yeah. I see a Tesla. I'd like to have one. I'm just like everybody else.
Uh-huh.
We've been living around the world. We lived in Tokyo. We lived in Singapore, beautiful place. We lived in Vancouver, and we rented houses in each place. And my wife, just being like all of us, we want to find a nice place next to a nice school, good food, get the right paint colors, the right couches, the whole thing. All I care about, like when we have these conversations, because we're doing it right now, we're renting a new house in Boston. All I care about, and I'm not kidding to anybody listening, where will the rope climb machine go and the pull-up bar? I literally, and here's the funny thing, we're leaving the house we're in. We rented for the last 6 months, and I'm friendly with the owner, and we're moving up the street. And I said, look, do we have to fix anything? The kids have done damage. And he said, well, I'd really like it if you could leave the pull-up bar and the rope climb machine. And I said, I don't know if I can curse on this thing or not, but fuck, that's the only thing I want. You can keep the couches, you can keep the kids.
Right.
So you got some walls to fix is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the only thing I care about. I don't know how I went down that rabbit hole.
I actually can relate to that to some degree. We live in a town, like a little home near downtown San Diego. It doesn't have a huge yard, but over the years of running our business, like it's nice to work out from home because it's just convenient. You can go outside, do some pull-ups, push-ups. I mean, I have a kettlebell at home. I've got things I can use, but I'm like, our neighbor is a handyman, and numerous times I've asked him, what do you think about building a pull-up bar in our little like grid square grass section? And he's like, oh, I'd love to, but just ask your husband. It's like, or what about a sauna? Can we put like one of those saunas so we can get some heat training in here, or like a ice cooler?
I'm putting in the new house. I'm definitely putting in a little sauna, ice tub in the basement. I'm really, as you get older, I'm finding that really the most important things in life, I'm distilling everything down to. It's not the Tesla, it's not the paint color. It's a cold tub, a sauna, a pull-up bar, a rope.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, we have a really very nice HQ in San Diego, but I really enjoy working from my garage where I've got natural light. Yeah. It's next to all these boxes of baby clothes, and nobody looks in my garage and is looking for me. Like I'm just there by myself. I love the quiet time.
That's where you get things done.
I also, I resonate. My dad would always say, if you wake up and you don't see your name in the obituary column, you're doing well.
It's a good day.
I was like, thank you, Dad. And one of the, and this comes to business for me in terms of my tactic on resilience is one of the things you always used to tell me was like, honor your time and attention and energy. And, you know, in business, you can have so many people pulling at you and things, and people wanting things, and people wanting to meet up with coffee dates and ask advice, or number of things. And while things are burning down and you have to make decisions and let people go and bring people on, and being able to honor my time and attention more and more to business, I can't take anything personally. This is just business. Things are going to happen. So the more I can flow through it, the less energy I'm going to drain from wondering why it happened, or why did this person leave, or why, like, getting all bent out of shape about it.
It's hard to do, but it's a waste of time.
It
Everything
is.
from like 12 seconds back, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yes, but just remembering that, like, honoring my time. What is best? The best service of my time is staying focused, continuing moving forward. So my time with Pear and our work we aren't fighting or bickering. We're actually looking at what's ahead, and then I have better time with my son.
We never fight or bicker, ever. Ever.
Okay, what's yours?
I would suggest some purposeful bickering just to build
Yeah,
something.
So this is a therapy session?
There is no need to add in any purposeful bickering. It happens naturally on its own.
There's a donut on the table. We will not eat it.
We will not share it.
Nice.
So Dr. T will never say this, but she's kind of one of the thought leaders in terms of programming and helping adaptive athletes find functional movement patterns again and get back into doing things that they like. And so, but the physical stuff is easy to see and understand, but more importantly, there's a lot of invisible wounds that we see in the population. So we run an adaptive class here a few times a week. But I'm curious, just in your experience, either in business or at the races, like folks, like we're talking about resilience here, but those invisible wounds, whether it's depression, anxiety, could be PTSD, there's a whole gamut of those things. Do you see that a lot in your company, folks with those types of issues or on the racetrack? And then if so, stories that you might have seen that folks, like how they manage to overcome those.
Yeah, just the numbers tell you it's everywhere. It's pervasive everywhere, right? We're lucky in that this company attracts probably a more active person. And I would correlate somebody being active with lots of dopamine pathways and chemicals being released in their brain, so they're probably feeling better. But it's everywhere. It's pervasive, and you know, I joke to myself. I'm embarrassed to even suggest this here, but like if I were president, I have no interest in being it. I would never get elected, so that don't be. We're just playing.
Yeah, we thought that about Trump too, so you never know.
We're just playing. Like, I think you could fix a lot of those things. And again, people listening would hate me for this, but I would just make everybody go to bed at 8 p.m. Like lights out.
Yeah.
And make everybody up at 5 a.m. Everybody's got to start the day with at least, you know, X number of burpees, X number of pull-ups, a 2-mile run. Like, I think you'd eliminate 50% of the issues just with, you know, look at the name of it says movement, right? I see it. Like, just movement.
Yeah.
Right? It's on your shirt, movement.
Yeah.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. I'm not, I've done enough therapy in my day for my own stuff, and now running a company that's based around movement, you can heal a lot of the emotional, mental wounds through changing the channel, which is physically getting out and doing something. So there is, you know, when we go and work with companies or we're educating, it's typically not around necessarily just movement patterns. It's, hey, how are you sleeping? Let's fix the primary thing, sleeping. How much time are you on your tech? If you're on your phone, we have a questionnaire that we give out to the companies we work with. Everyone is on their tech more than 4 hours a day. Everyone. That's unhealthy. Like, just in general, you're in other people's lives. Like,
what happens if it's 18 hours a day?
Well, your mortality.
What if it's 7 days a week, 18 hours a day for as long as computers have existed?
Yeah,
Is that you?
That's me. I'm dead.
Yeah.
Well, it's also just, so there's the computer and working, but there's also social media, which you've talked about, is get off looking into other people's lives and do something with yours, right? Like, get out of your own way. So the sleep, the tech, the the people you're around, the exercise you're getting, the movement you're getting, is key to improving your mental health. And I think these things can be solved fairly quickly. Like the World Health Organization, the leading cause of disability is depression now. So I think you're on the right path, getting people out to do something like a Spartan race, achieving something that they would have never even thought possible.
Game changer.
Yes.
Well, this kind of goes back to that reductionist mentality. If you're awake and it's cold at 5 a.m. and you're slugging through something, the rest of the day is easy.
Easy day.
Yeah.
I got my weight vest. My weight vest started at 5 a.m. this morning, and I should have it on right now, but I wimped out at 6 hours in. I had to take it off. It was bothering my shoulders.
Yeah.
Right. When you take it off, it's like, oh, today's a great
light
day.
Man.
Yeah, literally, the weight is lifted off your back.
Yeah.
So with these invisible wounds, so working with adaptive athletes, I had a bunch that did the first Spartan race, the adaptive Spartan race last year.
Yep.
And they crushed it, loved it.
Crushed it.
And so most of the adaptive athletes I work with who've had permanent injuries, there is a comorbidity of some invisible wound like anxiety, depression, or post-traumatic stress. And it doesn't have to be someone who's gone to war. It's just someone who's, based around that accident. But the training here, using strength and conditioning as their rehab, essentially, and getting them moving well, I find very powerful from a health professional standpoint, because I don't work with them right after their injury. I work with them, what's next? Because they always ask, what's next after a rehab, right? I want to surf again. I want to CrossFit. I want to Spartan race. I want to do stuff. And they very much should do stuff.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Any adaptive athlete, anybody you're dealing with that has any kind of issue, I'm happy to give you, 500 free entries a year, whatever you need for them. Like that's my thing to society. So whatever you need, just let me know.
Well, we're going to do a little training camp for those that are doing, so Lindsay Hood, who's been in touch with you, she's getting some athletes together to come train with us, and she's recruiting a team.
Oh, good.
But so I found as a physical therapist and strength coach, I love helping these men and women realize, hey, you can do a Spartan race. It just may look a little different the way you do it now from a chair. It just you jumping off of an obstacle with one leg is going to look a little different, but let's help you do it well. So no one should ever tell you can't do something. Like if any doctor ever tells you can't do something, then they're doing you a disservice, because movement is life. And everyone deserves the ability to be pushed and get out of their comfort zone and not be held back. So I've found, I was really glad to see the adaptive competition go really well. And I think, are you guys going to have more this year?
We are. We're going to do, at every race, adaptive athletes come out, but we're going to do another world championship for them.
Okay. Nice. I will have to be there for that one.
You got to be there for that one.
Same place up in Squaw?
I think we'll do it. Don't quote me, but I think it's in Laughlin at the end of the year, right outside of Vegas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, my question for you too is, since we have a little one and we're going to have another one, and
nice.
we're trained.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, you should know, because you have to do all the work.
I know.
Yeah. Right.
You don't appreciate the amount of work we have to put in.
I know. Well, that's why we get 9 months off.
That's right.
Yeah, and then it's really easy for you after they're born. Sure. Like, okay, so let's just not talk about that. Let's talk about having a family, right? Because you're there with your kids, you're training them. Like, how have you been able to balance that with running this major company?
I'd be lying to you if I told you I balanced it well. I really haven't. I think my wife, if she was on with us right now, would say that he's a workaholic. He's definitely working too much. The kids would probably maybe want to see me more. I'm not sure on that one. In 30, they might say they wish they saw me more.
Sure.
I mean, we very rarely, my fault, nobody else's fault, have a true sit-down dinner. So I'd be lying if I told you I'm balancing it perfectly. I don't think anybody gets everything in life. You just can't have it all. So I do my best. Obviously, it's incredibly important to me, my family. That's more important than anything. But my actions are at work.
Yeah.
And you know, I wake the kids up every morning religiously, 5:45 a.m. I torture them. I run out the door, go to work. I come home, wrestling practice, this thing, that thing. Have you done your Mandarin? Have you done your math? Yeah, I guess in one sentence, the answer is I'm not doing the best job I can. Look, you've got your health, you've got your family, and you've got your work life. It's a trifecta, right? And you could do a third, I guess, but it's going to like be muted. The outcome's going to be muted with all three.
Yeah.
You could do all family, which is probably the right thing we should all do, but then you're going to suffer with your health and you're going to suffer at work. So
Right.
I'm leaning a little too heavily in work.
Well,
I don't think there is a clear, we don't have an optimal balance. That's for sure.
Well,
I think that's actually a cliche question. I'm always interested in that because Pear does a crap ton of the load of work and I do too. It's just, there's a balance of, I want to be with my son. He's in daycare and I've learned to time and attention, let things go. Like this is going to take me twice as long as it would have before, but it's the way it goes because I've got a little one.
Yeah.
I think the whole, that concept of balance is, it's one of those things like, I don't know, what the American dream is, right? It's there for a select few who really get lucky in some way, but the rest is just a constant struggle.
We're in a grind, yeah.
Constant. And more and more these days, which goes back to this whole thing about the need for resilience and the onset of these longer term health issues, both emotional and obviously there's physical stuff too.
No doubt about it. I had one advantage when I was living in Vermont when we were there. Even though I'm a workaholic, like the mountain was right there in the backyard. I'd go out in the field. I'd be doing this call with you in the field. The kids would be but I'm not there now. I'm in the city. I'm in the action.
Right. So you're going around and living around the world. Are you all still doing that every year, like picking a spot and living?
No, we're in Boston now. We did the Singapore, we did Tokyo, we did Vancouver. Singapore now, and Boston now, and my wife dropped an anchor, and her family is here, so so we're here, and the headquarters is here, so I can't argue. My board members said, typically the CEO actually goes to work, so you should probably be where your office is.
Right. What other questions do you have? I have one more.
I think the podcast is called My New Normal, right? It's just finding and adapting to whatever the post-change work life that you have. So maybe is there an example in your life where there was there was a significant change that you felt like, all right, I have to figure out this new normal for myself?
That was my question.
Oh, there you go.
You guys could fight over the donut. So the question is there a moment where I pivoted or questioned myself?
So I would say more on the question yourself. Like either something happened or you question like, what the hell am I actually doing?
I mean, I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I don't do that every day. I mean, I work so hard at the business. We're in 42 countries. It's 275 events. And I just can't help myself. I just can't help myself. More. We got to get bigger. We got to change more lives. And I got to slap myself and shake my head and say, what are you doing? Like, don't you want to be with the kids at wrestling practice or with your daughters but it's every day. And so, it's probably something I need a psychiatrist for.
Maybe not psychiatrist.
just get out. You just got to get out early and run longer. That'll fix it.
But what about, is there a time that you felt like a particular example of a time when you maybe just didn't see something coming or a really hard experience and you had to let it go, move on, keep going forward. But it caused maybe a loss of time, or it felt like a failure to you?
This is an 18-year-old company. The first 14 years we lost money. There's not many entrepreneurs that lose money for 14 years and continue going.
Yeah.
I got sued. I was in battles with investors. I mean, it was a nightmare. Somehow you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I remember that day where it was just like, I think I read The Art of War or The Way of the Tao. That's what it was. And it's like the oldest writings that we know of. And there were just some really succinct, really simple statements in there. And one of them was about letting it, like it should, and I did. And then 3 days later, that whole 18 months of hell is out of your head. Just move forward. You become so emotionally attached with these battles and wanting to win and all that. Like, actually, losing sometimes is winning.
Right.
Right? So.
Yes, that's we've experienced our ups and downs, but we had one experience last year where it caused me more unrest. We basically bought out our partner, but it took a while to get there. And it was a great decision because, one, he was able to follow his next dream, whatever that was, and we were able to continue on the mission that we set out to do years before. And it was it was hard for me to let go of that. Well, this is where we started. We need to finish together. But it was letting go of that need and realizing, like, we're fine. We got this. We're on this. We have the same vision.
Sure.
And we can do it better as two than with three.
Yeah.
But I had to also, I read actually, so one of the books there's a few books I always look to for just like in the morning when I do my reading. There's Daring Greatly, which I love, Brene Brown. One of the ones this last year was Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg, which is a great one. I think for any working mother, definitely should read that. Maybe even father. But the other one is The Art of Living, which is an old writing as well. It starts with an E. Can't pronounce the name. Some philosopher.
One of those old guys.
Old guy.
Somebody
He's not alive.
Somebody with a beard and a toga.
But it was so, I just like pick up and read a chapter, right? And it's just was super helpful in getting me like, this shit happens. You got to move forward. You got important people, my son and my husband, that rely on me, people in my company. The more you hang on to this, the more energy you're just going to destroy. And you really don't have that much fucking time on this earth. So pay attention to what's in front of you, what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in our own way, we can relate. And he experienced the situation differently, which is something we've grown to be able to communicate about and realize, like, there are certain things that come up that cause me a little bit more unrest or less unrest than him, but be able to respect that way we take in information. And
yeah, it's one of those things where, school, business experience, MBA, all those types of things, you don't learn shit until you have relationship issues, and then you start to work them out, and then the light starts to go on.
Start to learn. I agree. Those old Vikings used to just go kill and conquer and move forward.
Yeah, that's
yes.
pillage.
So the last I thought of another question for you, and this will be the final one. If you were to give a young company starting out business, like just advice on the road ahead, like maybe advice that you wish you had when you were a young entrepreneur at Cornell, right? What would a piece of advice be?
Well, one, make sure you're committed and have the stomach for it. And that's a tough one to really grasp with just a sentence coming from me or some advisor. To make a point, I would give a speech at Cornell years ago to, let's say, 600 kids. And I would tell those kids, hey, if you're looking for something this summer, Love to help you out. How many people are interested? And half the room raises their hand, 300 kids. And then of the 300, about 100 come to see me after class because the other ones want to go out drinking, whatever they're doing at night. They don't have time to wait, right? Of the 100, 20 get in touch with me. 20 follow through. Of the 20, 6 commit. This is true, by the way. I'm giving you real numbers. Of the 6 that commit, 3 show up. Of the 3 that show up, 1 stays beyond a week, right? And so what I would say to that young potential entrepreneur is like 600 kids, 3, right? Like it's 1 out of that whole room that actually gets it done, shows up day after day. And I almost feel like success for that young person is defined by how invested they are. So like if you're with me, if your reputation is on the line, if you've mortgaged your house, if you sold your dog, if you did everything you had to do, like then you will fight and claw and bleed until it's successful. But if you're not that committed, if you don't have like, you're gonna quit.
Yeah.
If you leave yourself options. Yeah.
Because just go get a job. It's easier.
Right.
Right? Like Elon Musk is doing pretty well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for him to come out and say, like running a business is like looking into the abyss and chewing glass, it's pretty fucking hard.
Yeah.
You know, I know. So I don't know. Think twice before you do it, young person.
Thanks, Joe. Well, any other questions you have?
No, I think we're respectful of the time, but we appreciate your time.
You guys are awesome.
I guess last thing is any messages you want to get out there that we can help?
Yeah.
Biggest thing is if anybody needs a race entry, my email, I always give out my email, joe@spartan.com. We have a podcast. I don't know where you find it. We have all books and all that stuff too, but just shoot me an email if you need anything.
And come to the World Championships.
Come to the World Championship in Tahoe.
We'll see you up there this year.
Love to see you guys. It'd be great.
Magnus.
Take a look, by the way, at my Mongolian bows. Look at that.
Those are pretty sweet.
I could have taken those to the playground the other day.
Look at those arrows. My team went to Mongolia.
Very nice.
And the last bow maker that actually makes these handmade bows gave them to us. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, I might go hunt a deer or something right now.
I like your room. I'm glad it doesn't have a bunch of animal heads. You know, I like the weaponry and workout equipment.
Yeah, it's cool.
And okay, well, I'm going to finish up this podcast, so we have to, hang on, Joe. We're going to do some burpees for you.
All right, let's do it.
Can we see?
Okay. We have this little lobby here, but okay, so I'm going to, hold on.
You got it.
Okay, here we go. We're going. We just finished up the podcast with.
We'll just do the rest of the hour.
5 minutes. Let's go ahead and do 30 there. Just like if you miss an obstacle.
There we go. I've never missed an obstacle.
I've missed so many. You're already done with your 30?
I lost count at 60. Wait a minute.
I have 8 more.
All right.
How many?
Okay, 30.
We've missed the obstacle. We did our 30.
Nice job.
Okay. Yes, I've done a lot of burpees for Spartan.
Thank you for that.
You guys.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Take care.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.